These are every Soviet vehicle used in World War II: tanks, trucks, armored cars, and amphibious machines. Some legendary, some overlooked, but all part of the steel backbone that kept the Red Army fighting. Let's begin. Soviet main battle tanks. WWII. Broad-shouldered and bristling with multiple turrets, the T-28 rolled across battlefields like an early titan of Soviet armor. It spearheaded assaults in 1939, 1941, crashing through defenses in Finland and the opening months against Germany. Outdated but intimidating, it proved how early Soviet industry experimented boldly long before the war reached its peak. T-3476. Sleek, sloped, and brutally efficient, the T-3476 cut through mud, snow, and ruins with the stride of a steel predator. It became the Soviet frontline workhorse from 1941 onward, fighting from Moscow to Stalingrad and deep into Eastern Europe. Its rugged simplicity and deadly mobility shattered expectations, turning it into one of the most influential tanks of the war. T-3485. With a larger turret and a gun that struck with crushing power, the T-3485 arrived like a sharpened blade for a battlefield that had grown deadlier. It led Soviet armored thrusts from 1944 through Berlin, matching German heavy armor with far greater confidence. This upgrade transformed a good tank into a war-ending weapon, defining Soviet armored dominance in the final years. But something heavier was already waiting in the shadows. Soviet light tanks. WWII. Slim, riveted, and angular, the T-26 crept forward like an aging scout from another era. It fought in massive numbers from 1941, holding desperate defensive lines and supporting infantry across the Eastern Front. Outgunned and thin-skinned, it still bought the Red Army precious time when the war's opening blows fell hardest. BT-2. Light, fast, and almost skeletal in appearance, the BT-2 zipped across open ground with a racer's energy. It saw action in the early border clashes and the brutal opening months of 1941. Fragile armor limited its survival, but its speed shaped Soviet ideas about future mobile warfare. BT-5. With a lean turret and long, graceful lines, the BT-5 looked like movement even while standing still. It fought in Spain, Mongolia, and the early German invasion, often rushing ahead of infantry in deep maneuver operations. Its agility impressed, but its thin protection made it vulnerable in modern battle. BT-7. Sleek and elongated, the BT-7 sprinted across fields faster than most tanks of its day. It played key roles at Khalkhin Gol and in the early Eastern Front campaigns, leading rapid cavalry-style charges. Though quick, it couldn't withstand heavier enemy fire, becoming a symbol of mobility over armor. BT-7 meters. With a sturdier silhouette and a more reliable diesel heart, the BT-7M carried the last evolution of the BT family. It served during 1941's desperate retreats and continued in scattered roles through later years. Better endurance gave it an edge, but the growing power of anti-tank weapons outpaced its design. T-37A. Tiny, amphibious, and almost toy-like, the T-37A skimmed over water and crept through marshes where larger tanks dared not go. It scouted river lines and supported reconnaissance units before and during the early war. Its novelty impressed, but thin armor meant even small arms fire could end its mission. WWII. Flat, low, and featherlight, the T-38 glided across ponds and streams like a floating metal leaf. Used mainly for reconnaissance and communication roles, it appeared in the 1941 battles, but struggled to survive under enemy pressure. Its amphibious talent was unique, yet its battlefield value remained limited. WWII. Compact and modern-looking, the T-40 brought better buoyancy and a cleaner design than earlier light amphibians. It served during the defense of Moscow, scouting river networks and screening infantry movements. More refined than its predecessors, it still lacked the firepower needed for frontline dominance. WWII. Short, boxy, and agile, the T-60 darted between rubble and tree lines like a steel fox. It entered service in huge numbers during 1941, 1942, filling gaps left by early war losses and escorting infantry in tight urban streets. Underarmed, but simple to build, it became a lifeline when the Red Army needed armor fast. T-70. With a sharper turret and sturdier frame, the T-70 offered a stronger punch than earlier light tanks. It fought from 1942 onward, supporting mechanized formations and participating in major offensives, including Kursk. Despite improvements, its single-man turret overworked the commander, limiting its battlefield performance. T-80. Compact, yet more angular and refined, the T-80 stood as the last generation of Soviet light tanks. It appeared in limited numbers in 1943, 1944, performing reconnaissance and close infantry support duties. Better mobility couldn't save the concept, as the changing war made light tanks increasingly obsolete. Meanwhile, heavier steel giants were preparing to enter the fight. Soviet heavy tanks, KV-1. Broad, towering, and wrapped in thick armor, the KV-1 moved like a rolling bunker across the battlefield. It dominated early clashes from 1941, 1942, holding roads and towns even when surrounded by German forces. Its weight slowed it, but its near immunity to early enemy weapons made it a legend of stubborn resistance. KV-1 second. Smoother, lighter, and slightly sleeker, the KV-1S brought speed to a design once known only for brute force. It served from late 1942 through major offensives, accompanying Soviet breakthroughs where mobility mattered. Though less armored, its improved handling kept it relevant until newer machines arrived. KV-2. With a massive, block-like turret towering above its hull, the KV-2 looked more like a fortress than a tank. It appeared in 1941 battles, delivering crushing high-explosive fire against bunkers and infantry positions. Its huge silhouette and slow rotation made it vulnerable, but few weapons could ignore the blast it delivered. KV-85. Low, purposeful lines and a heavy gun gave the KV-85 a sharpened, modern appearance. It served briefly in 1943 as a bridge between older KV designs and the incoming IS family, fighting in key offensives. Short-lived but powerful, it introduced the armament that would shape the next generation. SMK. Long, multi-turreted, and experimental in form, the SMK looked like a steel battleship carved for land. It was tested in combat during the Winter War, pushing against fortified Finnish positions before being immobilized. Its unwieldy size exposed the limits of multi-turret concepts, guiding Soviet engineers towards simpler designs. DOT-100. Angular and stretched across a long hull, the T-100 carried two turrets like a moving fortress. It also saw action in the Winter War, supporting assaults on Finnish defenses alongside the SMK. Its performance confirmed that heavy tanks needed powerful single turrets rather than bulky multi-turret arrangements. IS-1. Compact for its class yet sharply defined, the IS-1 offered a fresh direction for Soviet heavy armor. It entered service in limited numbers in late 1943, fighting in early operations that demanded both armor and speed. Overshadowed quickly by upgrades, it still marked the beginning of a new era. IS-2. Broad-shouldered and armed with a long, imposing gun, the IS-2 looked every bit the war-ending hammer it was designed to be. From 1944 onward, it smashed through fortified zones and spearheaded the final drive toward Berlin. Its combination of punch and protection made it one of the most feared heavy tanks of the war. IS 2 meters. Retaining the IS-2's iconic silhouette, but refined with sturdier fittings, the IS-2M carried forward the same brutal style. Some late-war examples received upgrades while serving on the closing fronts of 1945. Stronger reliability gave it endurance, though the war ended before its full potential mattered. IS-3. Shaped with a pointed pike nose and a low domed turret, the IS-3 looked like steel from the future. It entered service just as the war ended, appearing in the 1945 victory parade but not in combat. Its radical forms signaled the direction of post-war heavy armor, leaving an impression far larger than its battlefield absence. And now, beyond these giants, the battlefield called for wheels fast, searching, and everywhere at once. Soviet armored cars. 3. Tall, angular, and riding on 6 rugged wheels, the BA-3 looked like a mobile turret rolling across open steppe. It saw service in the late 1932 and the early months of World War II, performing reconnaissance and light fire support. Heavy for its class, it offered strong firepower, but struggled on rough terrain. 6. With a reinforced hull and thicker lines, the BA-6 carried a tougher stance than its predecessors. It fought in Spain, Mongolia, and the opening battles against Germany, scouting ahead of infantry columns. Its armor improved survivability slightly, but its weight still limited off-road mobility. 10. Sharp-edged and turreted like a miniature tank on wheels, the BA-10 became one of the Red Army's most common armored cars. It served during 1,941 inches, reconnaissance, screening, and counter-raiding operations across multiple fronts. Well-armed but still road-dependent, it performed best on hard surfaces rather than mud or snow. 20. Compact, rounded, and built on a light automobile chassis, the BA-20 moved quickly along roads and forest tracks. It handled communication, patrol, and scouting duties early in the war, often operating ahead of motorized units. Its thin armor offered almost no protection, but its mobility made it valuable for rapid information gathering. 64. Small, sharply sloped, and nimble, the BA-64 cut through rough terrain with a confident, compact profile. Introduced in 1942, it scouted villages, escorted convoys, and supported infantry movements all the way to Berlin. Lightly armed but highly maneuverable, it became the Red Army's most reliable wartime armored car. FAE. Short-bodied and lightly curved, the FAI resembled a civilian car armored just enough to survive scouting missions. It served mainly in the 1932 and appeared in limited numbers during World War II's chaotic early months. Weak armor limited its combat use, but it laid foundations for later designs. FAI-M. Slightly broadened and more stable, the FAI-M offered a strengthened update to the earlier model. It carried out reconnaissance and internal security roles before being overshadowed by newer vehicles during the first years of the war. Its short service reflected how quickly Soviet armored development shifted under wartime pressure. But even as wheels raced ahead, the Red Army needed something louder, heavier, and far more punishing guns that moved with the troops and reshaped entire battles. Soviet self-propelled guns and assault guns. Su-76. Small, boxy, and open-topped, the Su-76 rolled forward like a mobile gun pit on tracks. It fought from 1943 onward, supporting infantry in forests, cities, and frozen front lines across the east. Light but incredibly versatile, it became one of the Red Army's most widely used artillery vehicles. Su-76 meters. Slightly sleeker and mechanically improved, the Su-76M carried a cleaner silhouette and more reliable performance. It backed assaults from Kursk to Berlin, knocking out machine gun nests and soft targets with steady precision. Cheap to build and easy to repair, it became a backbone of Soviet mobile fire support. Su-76I. With a low German-built hull and a sharp Soviet gunhouse, the Su-76I looked like a hybrid forged from captured steel. It served in 1943 on the southern and central fronts, filling gaps until production stabilized. Limited in number but sturdy, it turned battlefield salvage into useful combat power. Su-122. Rounded, heavy-faced, and carrying a powerful howitzer, the Su-122 struck from behind its thick frontal armor like a moving sledgehammer. It entered service in 1942-43, smashing defensive positions and providing assault support in major offensives. Its blast effect was devastating, though its slow reload made careful timing essential. Su-152. Massive, squared, and intimidating, the Su-152 felt more like a siege cannon mounted on tracks. It gained fame at Kursk, where its huge shells crippled enemy armor and shattered strongpoints. Nicknamed Beast Killer, it proved that raw explosive force could stop even the heaviest tanks. Su-152. With a long, slab-sided hull and a brutal, oversized gun, The ISU-152 carried the same destructive spirit into a stronger chassis. From 1944 through the fall of Berlin, it crushed fortifications and blasted enemy armor at close and long range. Its firepower shaped breakthroughs, making it one of the Red Army's most feared assault guns. ISU-122. Angular, purposeful, and fitted with a hard-hitting high-velocity cannon, the ISU-122 looked built for precision destruction. It supported armored spearheads in 1944-45, picking off enemy tanks and strongpoints with long-range accuracy. Reliable and sharply focused, it complemented the heavier blast weapons of its sister vehicles. ISU-122 seconds. Carrying a sleeker gun mount and faster-firing cannon, the ISU-122S appeared with a more aggressive and efficient feel. It entered combat late in the war, accompanying mechanized units during deep Soviet advances. The improved rate of fire gave commanders a more responsive tank hunter. Su-85. Low, streamlined, and armed with a focused punch, the Su-85 moved like a hunter lying close to the ground. It joined the fight in 1943, countering newer enemy armor during the fluid battles that followed Kursk. Accurate and nimble, it became the Red Army's first successful dedicated tank destroyer. Su-100. Long-barreled and sharply profiled, the Su-100 announced itself with a gun that could pierce almost any armor in the war's final year. It entered service in late 1944 and fought all the way into Berlin, stalking heavy enemy tanks at distance. Powerful and dependable, it became one of the finest Soviet tank destroyers of the era. ZIS-30. Thin, tall, and improvised in appearance, the ZIS-30 stood like a gun welded onto a narrow tractor frame. It saw action in 1941, firing desperately at advancing armored columns during the Red Army's chaotic retreat. Fragile, yet vital, it delivered needed anti-tank fire at a moment when every weapon mattered. Su-57. T-48, GMC. Light, open-topped, and carrying a quick, American-built gun, the Su-57 moved with the agility of a foreign machine wearing Soviet markings. It served in limited numbers with tank destroyer brigades from 1943-45, striking enemy vehicles during mobile operations. Though lightly protected, its speed and firepower added flexibility to Soviet anti-tank forces. And now, beyond the thunder of guns, the war demanded something quieter but indispensable: the transports, trucks, and machines that kept an entire army moving. Soviet transport vehicles and half-tracks. GAZ are boxy, modest, and instantly recognizable. The GAZAA rolled like the workhorse heartbeat of the Soviet supply chains. It hauled ammunition, food, troops, and fuel from 1941 to 1945, running endlessly across frozen roads and shattered villages. Slow but stubborn, it kept frontline units alive when everything else was running out. GAZMM, slightly tighter in form and tuned for harder work, the GAZMM carried loads with a sturdier stance than its predecessor. It served throughout every major Soviet offensive, shuttling supplies under fire and ferrying troops through muddy or snow-choked terrain. Its rugged simplicity made it one of the Red Army's most trusted logistical machines. GAZ, longer, heavier, and riding on 6 wheels, the GAZ-AAA looked built for burdens no smaller truck could handle. It transported heavy ammunition, towed light artillery, and supported anti-aircraft mounts across countless Eastern Front operations. Its strength offered stability, turning it into a backbone vehicle for heavier frontline tasks. ZIS-5. Tall, square-faced, and unmistakably solid, the ZIS-5 pushed forward like a steel mule through war-torn landscapes. It became one of the Red Army's main transport trucks from 1941 onward, carrying everything from fuel tanks to infantry squads across vast distances. Durable and repair-friendly, it answered the front's relentless demand for movement. ZIS-6. Longer-bodied and more commanding in presence, the ZIS-6 brought 3 axles and greater hauling power. It played critical roles delivering supplies and towing heavier equipment, especially during major offensives where momentum mattered. Its frame famously served as the base for early Katyusha launchers, giving it an iconic wartime legacy. Studebaker US-6. Tall, rounded, and surprisingly graceful for its size, the Lend-Lease Studebaker US-6 arrived with Western styling and Soviet grit. It became a frontline favorite from 1943 onward, pulling Katyusha launchers, transporting troops, and crossing deep mud with confidence. Reliable and powerful, it earned immense respect from crews who trusted it more than almost any other truck. Dodge WC series. Compact, muscular, and nimble, the Dodge WC vehicles brought a fresh, agile silhouette to Soviet motor columns. They served as reconnaissance transports, command vehicles, and light troop carriers across late-war operations. Their speed and dependability made them prized assets in a landscape where mobility saved lives. Willys MB Jeep. Small, spry, and instantly iconic, the Willys Jeep zipped across Soviet fronts like a racing scout at ground level. It carried officers, reconnaissance teams, medical personnel, and messengers across battle zones where quick movement meant survival. Light but incredibly versatile, it became one of the most beloved Lend-Lease vehicles in Soviet service. M3, scout car, angular, tall-walled, and half-open. The M3 scout car looked like a rolling steel barricade built for speed. It joined Soviet mechanized units from 1942 onward, escorting convoys and delivering reconnaissance squads under fire. Fast and reliable, it offered better protection than soft-skinned trucks, while keeping mobility at the forefront. IM-17, MGMC. Boxy yet formidable, the M17 mounted its turret of machine guns high above its American-built chassis. It defended Soviet armored columns from low-flying enemy aircraft in 1943-45, spitting dense fire across advancing skies. Its presence boosted morale, turning vulnerable convoys into moving anti-air screens. Komsomolets, T-20. Low, compact and towing ready, the Komsomolets crawled forward like a small, determined tractor built for battle. It hauled anti-tank guns and transported crews during the early years of the war, following infantry into forward positions under enemy fire. Strong for its size but lightly protected, it became a crucial link in early Soviet mobility. Voroshilovets. Heavy tractor. Massive, wide-tracked and imposing, the Voroshilovets looked more like industrial machinery than a battlefield vehicle. It towed heavy artillery, large trailers, and disabled tanks from 1941-45, working behind the lines and sometimes under direct threat. Its immense pulling power made it indispensable wherever weight defeated ordinary trucks. STZ-5 tractor. Squat, simple, and tractor-like in every sense, the STZ-5 dragged artillery pieces across mud, snow, and broken roads. It served heavily through 1941-43, supplying frontline divisions and keeping guns in motion during fluid battles. Its slow pace was a drawback, but its ability to endure terrible conditions made it vital. WWII tractor. Sturdy, square, and agricultural at heart, the WWII was adapted for military towing roles as the war intensified. It moved artillery and heavy loads across rear-front routes during the early and mid-war years. Basic but dependable, it became another piece of the quiet machinery that kept formations supplied. ZS-42, half-track, long, rugged, and gripping the earth with track and wheel power. The ZS-42 half-track blended truck utility with improved traction. It served from 1942 onward, hauling supplies through deep snow and thick mud where regular trucks faltered. Its hybrid design offered stability, making it a rare but valuable asset in difficult terrain. GAZ-60 half-track. Light, stretched, and fitted with tracked rear assemblies, the GAZ-60 brought new mobility to lighter cargo loads. It supported transport and towing operations early in the war, especially in areas where winter roads vanished beneath ice and drifts. Though not produced in huge numbers, it revealed how half-tracks could solve Soviet mobility problems. In the end, every wheel, track, and engine carried the weight of a nation's survival, forming a moving iron backbone that powered the Soviet march from desperate retreat to unstoppable advance machines whose echoes still rumble through history.